Hi everybody, welcome to Do You Believe show tonight, and I'm Noreen, your host, and I have my fabulous co-host with me, Tim Wood of Life Sci-Fi.
I would rather go by handsome. But
Handsome young man.
There we go.
My co-host. Thanks, Tim, for joining me tonight.
Thank you, and thanks to David for joining us tonight as well.
Yeah, and tonight our subject is the zombie apocalypse. Will you be ready for a zombie attack? Now tonight we have our good friend with us, David Weatherly, and he has written the book Black-Eyed Children. I happen to have a copy here. This book is totally awesome, freaky and awesome. And David, thanks so much for joining us on the show tonight.
Hey, it's great to be here, guys. How you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you. So, where should we start with the zombie apocalypse? How do we protect ourselves? It might not be funny if this really happens. How do we protect ourselves, David? How do we board up our home? What do you do? What do you do if it should happen?
I guess there's a lot of ways to answer that. You know, it depends on what type of zombie we're talking about. There's kind of it's become such a huge thing in the mass media now with the popularity of the zombies in movies and television and comic books and everything else. There's a real sort of darker side to this that we can go into in a little bit. But
we always love the dark side.
There's a lot of people out there who are genuinely preparing for a zombie apocalypse. And they're training and they're doing survival type of exercises and things like that in anticipation of some type of disease, is what a lot of these people think, or virus that causes people to behave in a very mindless manner. I suppose we could look at Washington, D.C. and say there's a good precedent for this probably happening because there's a lot of mindless behavior there, but as far as protection, I don't know. I think everybody has their own preference. Me, I'm kind of an old school guy, and if something like that really happened, I guess I would want to have a sword in hand.
A sword.
I would like to have a samurai sword.
Yeah.
Or a broadsword. That'd be my
well, how would we protect our home from letting them getting into the house?
Well, one of the funniest responses to that I saw was a cartoon that said the ultimate zombie defense, and it had a drawing of a house, and the guy had surrounded it with treadmills.
Awesome.
Now, you know that movie, was it The Night of the Living Dead? How the guy, he boarded up all his house with those boards and everything. Can that really keep out a zombie?
Well, if we look at the sort of popularized version in the media of zombies, then what we're looking at is just sort of a mindless undead that kind of shambles along. Some of these things are kind of funny. You look at these movies and wonder, why don't they just run away from these zombies? They don't move very fast. But the creepy factor is their persistence, that nothing really seems to stop them. They just keep coming and coming and coming.
And they only know one thing, right, David? And that's just to eat, right? They don't really know. From what I understand, is that they don't know any other. They don't know pain. They don't know. Human basic instincts, just the only to eat, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's kind of bear in mind that this is a fairly modern version of the zombie. It really came about around the time with George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which Noreen referenced a few minutes ago. And that came out in 1968. And that started this whole different phase of zombies has, like flesh eaters. If you go back prior to that, historically, zombies were rather different. They were still just kind of shambling, mindless creatures, but a lot of the stories of the periods prior to Romero's movie, you have zombies as a creature that is often controlled by a sorcerer or
It was like the necrocom. I can't pronounce it. Necroconoman. I mean, isn't that also one way that I guess people in the past or currently try to conjure zombies?
I think you were talking about the Necronomicon.
Yeah.
Which is, no, not really. That,
Okay.
You know, by all accounts, it seems to be a fictional book created, you know, just as a plot device in some stories. But really, the zombies, you know, they sort of evolved from the 1920s. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of history. I think it was 1929. There was a book that came out called The Magic Island. And it was written by this gentleman named Seabrook, who had went to Haiti. And he spent some time in Haiti and heard stories of zombies. And, you know, voodoo practitioners able to raise the dead and all these types of things. So that was 29. He published this book. It was very sensational. You know, he possibly fabricated a lot of the material that's in it. At the very least, he, you know, just kind of took a wild view of some of the things that were going on in Haiti, and it became very popular, this book did, and it sort of was an impetus to start a lot of interest in, you know, the savages in Haiti and this whole weird world of voodoo, and, you know, you had this rise of stories all of a sudden of zombies and voodoo dolls and things like this. So at that point, you really see the beginning of the zombie and fiction taking off. So in the 30s, you know, we had tons of stories coming out of the pulps about, you know, the jungles of Haiti and these bokor who were able to raise the dead and control them to carry out whatever deeds, you know, they chose to have them do.
So in that book, did they have the decaying zombie or the zombie that is like just a regular person but they're walking dead?
Well, that's correct, because what happened was, you know, the tales revolving around zombies in Haiti at the time were that these sorcerers, these bokor, would wait until someone died, and they would go and immediately retrieve the body from the grave and reanimate it through a series of potions and spells. Now, this, you know, I have to emphasize the cultural aspect here, because this was a very real fear for people living in Haiti at the time, and for quite a long period afterwards. They would go to lengths to ensure that their deceased loved ones were not taken to be utilized as zombies. So, you know, if they had the money, for instance, they would bury their relatives under a huge slab of concrete, or at the very least a very large headstone, in order to prevent the body being easily dug up. They would do things like bury the bodies close to main roads or crossroads where they could watch over it frequently until it started to decay, because the sorcerers could not at that point revive the body if it began to decay too much.
There's a famous case, and I'm not sure where it came from. It was Louisiana or Haiti, where the fella was buried alive, and was it the spell or something that turned him into a zombie, but he was really alive when he was buried? Do you know?
Yeah, no, that's a real case. That kind of springs off from a whole other era of interest in zombies. That was a man, his name was Narcisse, and this happened in, I think, I want to say it was in the late 60s.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
I'm pretty sure it was. And what happened was, this gentleman actually died in a hospital. This was in Haiti. He passed away in a hospital. He was buried. And sometime later, I don't recall how much time had passed, but he came wandering back into this village and claimed that he was this man Narcisse who had died, I believe it was several years previously. And there was so much documentation on this the fingerprints were checked to prove that he actually was this supposedly deceased man. The relatives were summoned and said, no, this really is him. And this is a gentleman who was clinically dead, but, by all indications, he had somehow been reanimated, essentially.
Oh.
Now,
He wasn't given any kind of...
I'm sorry?
He wasn't given any kind of drugs? I thought somebody did that to him on purpose.
Well, that's sort of what came out later on, because this particular case was the inspiration for a gentleman, one of the big inspirations for a gentleman named Wade Davis, who went to Haiti and spent 4 or 5 years in the 80s. And Davis was an ethnobotanist, and he had studied all these different plants in the Amazon. Then he started hearing these stories about this, what's called zombie powder in Haiti. He thought it was nonsense at first, but then the more he heard about it, the more intrigued he became. And then he heard about this case with Narcisse, who had been, brought back from the dead. So Davis ended up going to Haiti to study this case and this whole idea of zombie powder. And he ended up writing a book called The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Oh, yes.
It was also made it was made into a movie much later. The movie is very dramatized. If anybody is, they made the movie more of a horror movie, but it's based somewhat in the things he experienced. But Davis found out, what he did was he traveled around Haiti and convinced different bokor to give him their herbal mixture that was used to create a zombie. And while he found a lot of variation in some of the powders, the one thing he consistently found was that they all contained a neurotoxin from the fugu, which is a pufferfish.
Yeah.
And the pufferfish, a lot of people know it is a delicacy in Japan, but it takes a very high level of skill for a sushi chef to prepare it, because this is an incredibly toxic fish, and in fact, a deadly dose, can be fit on the head of a pin.
Wow.
So this neurotoxin was being put in all of these potions that these bokor were making in order to create a zombie. Now, what Davis found and some subsequent studies revealed was that this particular mixture that these guys were using could create a state within a person that caused them to appear clinically dead.
But they still had a heartbeat.
They still had, they would be diagnosed clinically dead, but they still had some level of consciousness and were basically just, sort of the old school version of a zombie, just a mindless, kind of shambling person.
Well, how long could somebody stay in that state?
I don't know if that was ever determined or not, because I guess it would depend on the dose that was given, and if it was consistently used over and over and over
Well,
again.
if they were clinically dead, would they decay?
Well, Narcisse was clinically dead and was buried, but then, he was revived, supposedly by this bokor, in some kind of act of revenge or something, and, just sort of ordered around to do, whatever menial task. And his body was not decaying because, while he may have been determined clinically dead, he was technically still alive. It's just that he was in such a state that he didn't really have complete control, of his life, of his body.
So, and that kind of a zombie, what did they do? Did they crave the human flesh or the best parts of the human body? Did they crave that?
Not really. No. This goes back more to, a lot of the early zombie stories, as I said, just depict the zombie as a person who has died but has been reanimated and isn't necessarily decaying, but is just in this mindless state. And there's some evidence that at least a portion of these
Would you classify Frankenstein as a zombie?
No, Frankenstein's not a zombie.
He's kind of like reanimated, or I don't know.
It's more of a golem, or being created from different parts.
Yeah.
So it's not really.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was just wondering if like zombie, the term, is just like a general term for something that's reanimated.
Well, technically it can be. I mean,
Okay.
Some people would even define, for instance, a vampire as a type of zombie because it's a reanimated corpse.
Right.
The difference in all of these being that, for instance, a vampire is always depicted as having some level of consciousness and control over its own actions, whereas zombies really are not. They're always depicted as being one of two things: either completely mindless and focused on, in the modern versions, just eating flesh, devouring, or in the older versions, just completely mindless, but under the control of the person who has reanimated them.
Would you have you heard anything about bath salts, David?
Yeah, that's a very strange thing that's come up in the last couple of years. I guess it was the spring of 2012, I think, was the first incident with that. And what happened was a guy in Miami attacked another person and was literally attacking him with his teeth and, tearing pieces of this gentleman's flesh off. And they ended up saying that this fellow was on a new drug that they call bath salts. Now, my understanding is I've heard this from a number of sources, but I honestly haven't followed up on it to know whether it's an urban legend or whether it's where the term really came from. But what I had heard originally was that the term bath salts came about because they were selling this drug under the guise of it being, bath salts. Like you would go in and get bath salts for your bath, and that it was some kind of crystallized form of. There was a lot of speculation. They were saying at one point it was some new form of LSD, and just all types of different things. But at the very least, this is a highly dangerous drug, and it is, it's caused a lot of cases around the country of people attacking just random people in the streets. I mean, there was a police officer attacked a few months ago. I can't remember, that might have been in Florida too. And, these people are really strung out. Their heart rate is incredibly high. They are not really appearing to have any control, of what they're doing. Their consciousness just seems to be really, messed up, and they are physically attacking people as a zombie would do.
How long does it take for them to come off of that drug?
My understanding is it's highly addictive. It's considered deadly. But I know that, there have been cases where people have been caught and hospitalized for usually like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And often they need to be kept sedated because they're so, they're so strong, and they attempt to overpower the people that staff in the hospital.
Oh my God.
Police officers and anything else. So it causes, high levels of paranoia and delusions and everything else. And apparently it takes quite a while for the person to recover.
I actually have a video that I'll play in a bit that's the Navy actually issued like a PSA, like a public service announcement video on bath salts. It's pretty creepy.
Right.
It's like, I guess, the people, from what I heard is like if they do a couple of doses of it, their skin actually starts to fall off their face, and they literally look like something you would see on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it does, which is, it's...
Yeah. Why anybody...
I don't know what the chemical composition of it is. I know it's some type of stimulant, and, as I said, it's highly dangerous, causes delusions, and, I believe there have been a few cases where people are experiencing, pieces of their flesh coming out. Now, at least in one case that I recall,
God.
Of those drugs.
Oh, they were ripping their flesh off?
Yeah.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really... So if we did have a zombie outbreak, would it be more or less the kind of a virus that would cause that, do you think, David?
Yeah, if there genuinely was anything akin to that, I think it would be the result of, it could be, some type of virus that affected the brain. We could speculate on it all day, but the fact of the matter is we have to face the reality that governments all over the world are constantly playing around with, weaponizing viruses and diseases, and who knows what they could brew up in a lab somewhere. It's a genuine concern that something like that could get loose and spread very quickly.
It could happen. It really could happen. So,
we'll play that PSA thing really quick.
Are you gonna play it now?
Yeah, I'll play it right
Oh,
now.
okay.
Yeah, we'll go ahead. 1 second, Dave. I'm just gonna go and play this thing. It's pretty creepy. We'll see if we can get it.
It's a shocking video in which an actor plays an American sailor high on bath salts. He sees other sailors as demons, punches his girlfriend, and gets wheeled into the ER, pinned down by paramedics.
Bath salts not only will jack up your family and your career, they'll jack up your mind and your body too.
The Navy is increasing efforts to warn sailors after military doctors started seeing more cases. These bath salts don't have anything to do with therapy or the salts you use at home.
What we're talking about here are very potent synthetic drugs that are probably synthesized somewhere overseas. We think possibly China.
Dr. Alex Garrard has seen dozens of cases firsthand.
People act very primal instincts, animalistic behavior.
He's seen users who think they have superhuman strength and are almost impossible to subdue.
So that's where we see things like the ripping out, the taser wires. They're impervious to pain. They don't really feel anything.
Why are bath salts popular with troops? They're sold under catchy names like Bolivian Bath or Vanilla Sky. A packet only costs $25 to $50.
It's cheap, perhaps sometimes cheaper than other.
On the screen too, so okay. We're back on.
Oh, we're back on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They never got too old.
Okay. So, since it would be a virus then, David, do zombies really have strength to them? I mean, are they strong? I mean, I wouldn't think if their body is decaying like that it would be so hard to fight them off.
Right. Well, you bear in mind we're talking about there's a big gap between movie zombies and what could possibly be something like this that we could physically deal with. Now, this new drug, bath salts, is a possibility because of how it's causing people to behave. These people actually do exhibit some additional strength than what they normally have because their adrenaline is so high and they're so strung out on this drug. As I said, it's a stimulant. So people that are on those types of drugs, you talk to law enforcement officers, and it's amazing some of the things that these people can do.
So somebody,
Powered by these drugs.
there could be like a drug house in a neighborhood. Just say there was a drug house in the neighborhood and there was like maybe 10 guys or 10 people in this house and they passed around those bath salts and they went out into their neighborhood, and I wonder if they would go in a pack or would they go individually to go after the other people? Would they go in a pack, do you think?
I don't necessarily think they would under the influence of bath salts. All the cases that we've had shown in the media is, it's always an individual who's taking these drugs and possibly overdosed or taken so much of it that it's just lost all sense of control and is run out in the streets.
Okay, so
Just say no to drugs and yes to community watch.
So if one came here to my house, and Tim was here with me, and this guy's coming to my house, he could probably knock down the door if he was kind of powerful, or even come in through a window, just bang the window in. How would we fight him off? I'd have to protect him. No, I'd have to protect him.
Yeah, I'm getting bath salts in your salt and pepper shaker.
How would we protect ourselves from him? I don't have any. I don't have any machetes or. I mean, how the hell? Even, do you think on that instance maybe we could stab him in the heart? Do you think that would work?
Thanks.
If we're talking about somebody under the influence of bath salts, yeah, probably so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but I think, zombies, totally different thing. Now, do you think, in all the footage I've seen of in the movies and stuff like that, they always go in hordes and attack in packs and stuff. I don't really see that. Now, if I didn't have a brain and I saw something walking next to me that showed any amount of life and I was hungry, I would probably just attack the other zombie. I mean, it makes sense to me.
But would the other zombie have a brain? They don't have brains.
They
do
don't.
They?
I mean, that's the one thing that's never made sense to me in the movies is they're so brainless, yet they still can tell each other.
Well, don't they attack one
other.
another?
Not really.
Oh,
not
they
in the movies.
don't?
No, they just attack humans.
Human beings. And why is it that now I think they have some tasty parts. We have a chart. We have a chart. They have some tasty parts on a human that they like the best, and then they discard, and supposedly they give the lower parts to the zombies that are on the lower level of, I guess there's higher levels of zombies, but the higher level zombies get the good parts. And I don't know what that is. Is that our brains and heart and guts and whatever? And I guess
a lot of the fiction, what happens is, it's even been some of the movies where they just, they crave brains, the mushy gray matter, essentially.
Now, if there's a lot of, do you know any Doomsday preppers that are specifically prepping for a zombie apocalypse, David?
No, I talked to one guy a while back, and he was quite an interesting character. Now, he was more of a prepper, but really had this whole kick going about a zombie apocalypse. Now, he was convinced, interesting enough, that something like this was going to happen as a result of, again, an attack by another country, possibly, or a terrorist attack that spread some kind of virus, causing people to act in a mindless manner.
Yeah, I know that there's things like HARP that people believe that can possibly alter people's brain waves and make them do whatever they want. Is that kind of, I know it's not viral, but I know there has been, I guess, military experiments in projecting or altering people's thoughts and perceptions.
Sure. There's been a lot of experiments, in the areas of psychic influence and development and telekinesis and things like that. And part of the time that has bordered into areas of influencing or controlling another person. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit different than a zombie, but it's still kind of, I can see where the similarities would come up.
Right.
There's a lot of talk in the last couple of years. In fact, Jesse Ventura with Conspiracy Theory even did an episode on electronic control or influence, and this whole possibility that with the rise in technology that things could be developed to influence another person's brain and send signals directly into them and cause them to perform actions. We'll get into the whole idea of programming someone like a Manchurian candidate when we get into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now you were going to talk, and you said there was a darker side of zombies. Did you touch on that yet?
Well, we touched on that a little bit. That borders into the whole concept of voodoo and how the zombie stories originally rose, with the concept that certain dark practitioners in Haiti were able to reanimate corpses in order to do their bidding. There's so that they could then turn and sell them as workers.
And you can train them to do that? I mean, you can get a zombie state person to do that?
Well, supposedly under this zombie powder, the person is so checked out that they will basically obey any simple commands that they're instructed to follow. And, if they're sent to work in the fields and, hey, go pick sugar cane or something, that's just what they'll mindlessly do. Again, this powder, it's been examined for quite some time, and being a neurotoxin, it just, numbs down the person's feeling, and their consciousness is basically very, very suppressed in the state.
So how long would they keep them in that state?
Well, if the bokor continues to monitor this and, resupply them with this drug as it goes along, then it could be, I guess, indefinite, until the body physically gave out.
Oh, yeah. Now, so if they're in that state, and once they used them, to do their work during the day, what happens at nighttime? Do they sleep? Do they eat? What do they do with them?
Right. They were sent to just, they did, there are some stories that say that, they would be fed, but they would be fed very bland food. There were a couple of things that were taboo for zombies. One of them was salt. They weren't supposed to be fed salt.
And why is that?
Well, there was something about salt that would start to apparently counter the zombie powder that was used on them.
Are they still practicing that today in Haiti?
They get some areas where it's very questionable. You do hear stories occasionally, now Vodou is a valid religion in Haiti. Vodou can be found all over the world, and it does have a large following of people who practice it, has their valid spiritual path. Now, that being said, you won't really find with those practitioners, you won't find them, creating zombies or using voodoo dolls or all the things that the media has created around this tradition. So, I'm sure in some dark corners here and there are still practitioners who would, do this type of thing.
But they don't actually go after people like the zombies that we see on TV.
No.
They're just used for work slaves or whatever.
Yeah, that's a pretty modern creation, that they become reanimated and crave flesh. And we've seen a lot of different versions of it in the media, and what causes it.
Now, David, what do you think is the most, if there is a scenario for a zombie outbreak, do you think it will be a viral outbreak or one where people's minds are altered due to some device, or the dead come back to life? I mean, what do you think?
I don't see a widespread appearance of zombies. I think the closest thing we're going to see in realistic terms is what we're seeing with these bath salts. With this drug use that's causing people to act in this manner. I think that's the closest thing we're going to see.
What's scary is that people are actually choosing to take them. I don't know what's freakier, the people that are choosing them or the after effects. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is frightening, and people are still. I mean, there was a story in the media recently about one of these attacks. From a woman who had taken this drug, and you really kind of wonder why people don't get it. It's obviously not something to play with.
Suppose this lady had kids. Would she have attacked her kids?
You'd have no. I mean,
you just attack anybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Oh my God!
There's videos on YouTube.
Do they know where this drug came from and who started it?
I believe it started in Russia.
Oh.
Yeah, the Russians created it, I think.
Yeah, it started in Russia and it spread first to the East Coast. And I think the first incident that showed up, I
Yeah.
Is the first one that I'm remembering, and that was very dramatic. And since then we've had quite a few, and like Tim's saying, you can find a lot of news reports and so forth online, and some of them have been caught on video, and it's pretty frightening. It's as if you're watching something from a horror movie, because these people are completely irrational. There doesn't seem to be any kind of consciousness or anything. I mean, they are just mindless and screaming and wailing and attacking whatever gets in their path.
Oh my God.
So,
And they're clawing at people, they're biting people, and it's as I said, I think that's the closest thing we're going to see to genuine zombie attacks.
so just for fun, David, let's say you're at your house and you wake up on a Sunday morning and you turn on the news and you find out there's a zombie outbreak in your town. What would you do, or in the first 24 hours, what do you think you would do to ensure your livelihood, just to make sure you're alive?
Well, I'm pretty well prepared in general, so
Okay, yeah.
I think it's a matter of keeping watch, and even if it's a zombie, a 45 can do some damage.
Yeah.
You shoot their knees out, they're not going to get any closer.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I don't put a lot of trust in a sword, because you don't have to reload that.
Right. Now, David, are there any other, besides the voodoo hoodoo stuff? Is there any other like traditions or things that people have practiced that might have gave birth to what we find on TV today?
There's different variations you'll find around the world of the whole concept of raising the dead to some degree. The one obviously that took off the most were the stories out of Haiti, and like I said, that's in large part due to Steve Brooks' book, The Magic Island, and some of the subsequent fiction that followed after that. So really that's what you get into. You go to different parts of the world that takes on different cultural pieces. Like you go to Eastern Europe, for instance, and you find all these tales of vampires, and as we said earlier, that's the type of zombie. It's a reanimated corpse.
And back then they used to put, I know, like in the Victorian era, they used to put bells above the graves, right?
That's right. And, they did that because of people being mistakenly announced dead and buried alive.
Right.
And, we get into areas where there were a lot of vampire stories where, someone would hear sounds from a cemetery or things like that, and they would dig up the corpse, they would dig up the body and find inside the coffin scratch marks. And they incorrectly assumed at the time that this was because the corpse, that this was a vampire, and that the claw marks were from where they'd come and left, through the coffin and so forth. But the reality is there were occasions where people were buried alive, and imagine coming out of a coma or something similar, and finding yourself in a coffin. You're gonna scratch and claw and panic and do whatever you can to try to get out. So.
Right. What a way to go.
Yeah, they invented bells that were attached.
Yeah.
They would attach a string to the person's hand easily, or the wrist, or the fingers, and the bell would be up over the gravestone. And if the bell was ringing, it was because the person had woken up. There's traditions in other places. I think it's Japan that they would, when a person was pronounced dead, they would actually lay them out for 3 days to make sure they didn't wake back up before they were interred. So you find a lot of different variations on the same thing in different parts of the world.
Now, are there? I know we've been talking about humans, but have there any cultures or anything like that where they try to reanimate animals, like cats or dogs, or?
Not that I've seen, not very widespread anyway.
Dog zombies. That'd be cool. Yeah, little rat zombie. That'd be pretty freaky.
Did the chat room have any questions?
Yeah, one of the chatters, Chavo, was asking something about swimming zombies, I guess. If they believe that zombies can swim.
In some fiction, they're depicted as just walking into water and then walking back out on the other side.
That's crazy.
Now, in all these movies and like a Walking Dead, do you notice that the weather is always beautiful? It's always perfect outside. There's never any rain. What about the snow? Would they be able to handle the snow? What would happen to them in the snow? I mean, if they might freeze to death, right?
Well, they're already dead, aren't they?
Oh, they're already dead. Oh, that's right.
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends what type of zombie I guess you're talking about. Like, I guess a viral zombie. I mean, all viruses, they eventually die, right? Because the virus is considered a living organism, right?
Right.
So it needs something to sustain itself. So I guess once the host is depleted, then I guess it would just
I would think that they would just freeze.
But if you're talking like an undead corpse, then I think the only way to kill it would be to or that it would die with that. It would probably just.
So the thing would be to go to the snow country and you'll be fine. Go where there's snow.
I'd probably just go stake out an ammo store.
It's funny though, when you look at the historical periods that these different classical monsters become popular, there's always some connection to what's going on in the society that causes it to be popular. For instance, we'll get the Victorian period, vampire stories became very popular, and the sort of shadow side to that is that the Victorian period, there was a lot of repressed sexuality, and vampire stories have this very sexual component to them. So it's interesting. You see a lot of speculation now with the popularity of zombies, and what does that mean from a sociological perspective? And it's really funny. You go online and start looking at some of this stuff, and you'll see people are saying that zombies represent Republicans, or that they represent Democrats, or whatever. But they always seem to depict this attack on what's normal. If you notice most zombie movies, they're always shambling through a suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they sort of, in that sense, represent things that are outside and threaten the normal day-to-day existence. So, not trying to get all serious on you, but I think it's very curious to look at the things going on in the world now and the rise in popularity of zombies in fiction.
What's your favorite zombie movie?
Probably Zombieland.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that one's great.
I just watched Attack of the Stripper Zombies last night. Seriously, yeah, it was on on demand. It's great. It's good stuff. So.
And of course, Walking Dead is pretty impressive.
Oh God, that's yes, I love it, never miss it.
Such a great job with that.
Oh, they are awesome. Well, I hope we never encounter anything like that.
Stripper zombies wouldn't be too bad.
Just in case, keep a 45 strapped on and a sword nearby.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fine. And a lot of salt, I guess. Yeah. So, well, thanks, David.
I'll tell you that. I'll tell you a classic scene, because I know we're about at the finish here. I don't know if any people listening remember, there was a television series on in the 70s called Kolchak the Night Stalker.
I loved that.
And one of the all-time best shows for paranormal stuff. And there was, I can remember being young and watching this, and it was not gory, but it had this creepy edge. And there's a scene in my mind that I've never forgotten where there was an episode about a zombie. And when Kolchak shack finds this zombie who's like sleeping in the back of a hearse in a junkyard. And he crawls in that thing with that zombie and he fills the mouth and starts smelling the lips.
I don't remember seeing that one.
Yeah, it's a good episode.
It's probably on YouTube or something.
That was a good show. And any other questions from the chat?
No, I mean, people were just asking general questions about, it's all theoretical. Do zombies walk or run, or can they swim? But, I guess it's whatever, we don't know. Unless David wants to take some bath salts and then videotape them. But, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so... Well, end it then? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, David, thanks so much for joining me and Tim. We had a blast with you.
Yeah, it was a good time.
It was fun. Thanks, David. Hope you'll join us again. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye,
David.
David. Thank you.
Have a good night, honey. Good night.
Right.
David's always fun.
Yeah. Fun show. It was good. But, yeah, we're going to be doing ITC in about a half hour or two. Not too long time, only for like an hour. Going to be trying some ITC and stuff. So if everyone in the chat could please like the show and please subscribe, that would be great. Helps us out a lot. And we'll be back on about 8 o'clock. Right, Nori?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just make sure you guys refresh the page and chat, and we'll be here. And please subscribe.
And thanks everybody for joining Do You Believe? I'm your host Noreen.
This is
my
Tim.
co-host Tim. Yeah. Thanks, Tim. And you have to ask yourself one question. And what is that question, Tim?
Have you seen
No.
zombie strippers?
Do you believe? Thanks everybody. Good night.
Thank you.